Hello, 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 and welcome to Let's Talk Power Live, our summer power chat series, where we talk to one education author about one book and one big idea. You know, summer is when educators finally get a little bit of breathing room. They're not in the building at all, maybe, and maybe they're on a truncated, smaller schedule. They get some time to breathe and they step away. One thing we wanted to do at Liaison Educational Partners is give educators some time to use that breathing space and consider some big ideas. We know we talked to students about their summer slide. We wanted to make sure adults had something to stem the tide of their summer slide. And this session, I'm very excited to bring to the stage Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. I'm going to share his book with you all. He is the founder of Identity Talk Consulting, LLC, and it is a global educational consulting firm that supports K-12 teachers in becoming identity affirming educators. He's a former middle school math teacher in Philadelphia and Boston. He brings 18 years of experience as an educator, author, consultant, and speaker. His work has reached educators across the United States and internationally, including Ethiopia, Sierra Leone, and Zambia. His latest book, which we're going to talk about today, Learning to Relearn, Supporting Identity in a Culturally Affirming Classroom, has received multiple honors, including the 2026 Nautilus Book Silver Award, the 2025 IPPY Gold Medal, and the 2024 Forward Indies Gold Award. And I want to say thank you, Kwame, for joining us today for our session of our Power Chat. So welcome. Glad you're here today.
Hey, Dr. Tangi, how we doing?
I'm doing well. So let's go ahead and get right into our conversation. When you wrote this book, my first question is, who did you write this book for?
I think selfishly I wrote it for myself because a lot of what I write in this book speaks to my own life experience growing up, being a first generation Ghanaian American, living in Ghana for part of my time as a child, particularly my teenage years, and always trying to figure out how to fit in, where to fit in different spaces. And I think it all culminated when I moved abroad with my family and started to work at international schools, because you have a lot of students with third culture backgrounds who are in that similar space of navigating and trying to figure out who they are. And I wanted to write a book that would allow for teachers to see these students for the beautifully messy humans that they are, because identity is messy for a lot of us,
All of us.
especially in a country like America, where we often call it the melting pot of culture. And you have all kinds of mixes, people from multiple generations, people speaking different languages, people who have different backgrounds of faith. There are so many things that identify who we are as people. And I wanted to write a book that would allow for the reader, ideally the teacher and the school leader, to gain some capacity around how to better honor those people who may not be able to fit in any particular singular group, but just to let them be them.
Yeah, that's important, right? And I love how you said when you work internationally, you have even more cultures than we have here in the United States. You have more languages, and you have an opportunity to do something differently than maybe you would do if you were living in the United States as an educator. And we see here in the States, sometimes students that come to us with different languages, we see them through the lens of deficit. But in other countries, I would imagine that they see them through the lens of opportunity for learning. So as you think about your book, what did you want them to understand and do differently?
So speaking of what you just said about deficit mindsets, I want the reader to see that when you're able to speak multiple languages, that's an asset.
Mm-hmm.
That is a skill that's necessary if you're trying to be a global citizen. If you are trying to work in different industries internationally, to be multilingual is a strength, a major strength. And I can attest to this because my wife works with the US government and she has colleagues who cannot work in certain countries because they didn't have the required language proficiency level to work there.
Wow. Wow. You
So
don't even think about that. The the the,
it's huge.
the required language proficiency
Hmm.
to work in another country. We don't even talk about that and how important that language proficiency is. And we think about language proficiency as English proficiency, not the same thing as language proficiency.
Right. And I think being in an international setting, you are in a prime position to learn about other cultures because of the proximity you have to people who are coming from those different backgrounds. So I could be in a classroom where, like my son, for example, he's in a classroom where he has classmates who are from parts of Asia, classmates who are from Lebanon, classmates who are from India, other parts of Africa, some coming directly from the US and Canada and other parts of North America. That's his norm. Whereas in my case, I grew up in the States where majority of my classmates were black, and then you may have a few people who are white, Asian, uh, Latinx, but his is just like a United
Everybody.
Nations.
Right.
So he
And
is easy.
he's easy, right? And the level of respect
Yes.
that your son is developing versus what you and I were led to believe about people who come from different places and spaces with different languages. That's huge. So and this leads us to our next question. What pattern, problem, or tension in education were you responding to as you wrote this book?
For me, the whole concept of learn to relearn is to help teachers and educators in a large degree address their biases when it comes to certain identities.
Mm,
When you think about the States, of course, we know how racism is structured. We know it's institutional. When you look at the way schools are redlined, or the way that you have programs where you have black students being bused to predominantly suburban white neighborhoods. That still happens today.
what happens today?
Like you talking new Jim Crow, it's still going on in the States.
It
Now in the
is.
international setting, it's more about the colonial setup of international schools
Okay.
where it's an international school. So you're going to have students who are speaking different languages. So to not allow that student, or for you to not see that student's linguistic background as an asset, is a disservice to that student. When you're telling them you have to speak in a certain accent, or their accent is not the right accent. You have to speak more American. You have to speak more British. That's the more proper or standard accent. That is part of the work that we're trying to disrupt through this book. And that's just
Mhm.
one example. We could even talk about the way that we look at recruitment in international schools. The fact that most of the leaders in those schools are either white American, white European, and they get the benefit of the doubt. But then you have people who may be from the host country, or who are of a melanated color, who may not get that same grace, and they have to do a lot more. So learn to relearn is very much a mantra. when we think about the way that we treat students, the way that we treat teachers, the way that we treat certain school leaders, and the way in which we view the systems that we are operating under.
And that idea of the systems that we're operating under, and the idea that groups get benefits of the doubt that other groups don't. What one assumption, and this is going to be a tough one, what's one assumption your book is really helping leaders of building systems and maybe leaders in classrooms work to disrupt?
I think the biggest assumption is just because you do have representation of other nationalities, other races, other backgrounds, doesn't mean that you understand what it means to be culturally affirming.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Diversity is not enough.
It's not.
Diversity is
It's
just
not
checking the
enough.
box.
It's checking a box. And here's the thing about diversity, and I say this a lot. There is nothing you can do about diversity. Diversity happens whether you do something or not.
That's right.
What matters is the conscious, intentional, deliberate choice to be inclusive and equitable. That's the
True.
difference. Because, I can go to a grocery store and pick up 5 lemons. They're going to be diverse. They're going to be lemons, but they're going to be all different shapes. The skin's going to be a different thickness. It's going to be a different whatever, the level of sweetness in one versus another. They all look the same. They're diverse. Now, what I do with my diverse lemons is a choice I have to make.
Yes.
Wow. So that assumption that just because you have the differences doesn't mean you are being culturally responsible or responsive, or even that you know what you're doing.
Yes. And it's still a conversation that we're having today.
Like, why? Like, that's globally. My question. Globally, right? My question to people is, I was doing an interview a while ago, and we're talking about this whole idea of, teaching. I've been asked, how do you teach a certain group of kids? I said, that's the wrong question. The question is, why are we asking people who make the deliberate decision to become an educator, why they have such a hard time teaching kids who don't look like them? That's the question. Not whether or not why, not how you teach them. Why do you find it so hard to teach them? Simply because they speak, look, sound different than you. You know what I mean? That to me is a much bigger question. So it's summertime where we are in the States, and you're here in the States for a great, exciting event. It's the summer. What's one big summertime idea you want these educators to rest with?
One summer idea, I would say, before you go back into the classroom, before you return to your school, just identify one thing that you can do to be better than you were the year before. Just think of one thing.
Not a lot.
One thing, not a lot. It's kind of like with New Year resolutions. We may tend to go overboard with it and have a whole bunch of goals that we know are not attainable. Just think of one thing that you can focus on, hyper focus on for an entire year. And then at the end of the year, you can look back and say, I made this much progress and I got to this point. Now let's see what I can do next year with a different goal.
Right. And keeping and not letting that one that you built this year go to the wayside. This is building, right. Not, oh, I did good, now I'll put it away. It's I did better. I'm going to keep it, but I'm going to focus hyper on another thing so I can keep building my repertoire.
That's right.
Wonderful idea. The work I do, and this is our last question, the work I do centers power. And we've talked about that a lot, right? Power in education. And we believe that power in education is a real thing, and instructional power is even more real. So as you think about learning to relearn, what is the instructional power in learning to relearn?
Understanding that by understanding other people's cultures and their backgrounds, it gives you data that will inform your instructional practice, data that will allow you to figure out the best way to support the child. See, we look so often at assessment data and other metrics, but there's a thing called street data. So just
Yes, there is.
quoting Shane Saphir
Yeah,
and good sister,
yep.
Dr. Jamila Dugan.
Dugan, yep.
Street data is big. Like just being able to understand the cultural dynamics of a student's family gives you so much intel about how you should be teaching that child. And so often we overlook that. We overlook it. So I would definitely say that.
Awesome. Well, that takes us to the end. Everybody, thank you so much for enjoying another session with Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. Here is his book, Learning to Relearn, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. Please enjoy when this comes out. Make sure you get a copy of his book. Follow him on all social media platforms. Information about the book will be provided as we wrap up our session. All right, Kwame, thank you so much and have a great day. And he's going to be joining us on Let's Talk Power Live coming soon. We'll see him then. All right. Have a good one, everybody.
All right. Bye, everybody.